One, go. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Reddit fundamentals. You're going to learn today how Reddit works and how to improve the visibility of your content on the social media platform. Reddit is a place where content can flourish, engagement can drive traffic, and stories that dominate online conversations can be discovered. Our leader today, our instructor, our fearless leader is Meena. Meena, do you want to save me a little embarrassment and pronounce your last name for me?
Sure, it's Meena Thiruvengadam.
Thiruvengadam. Okay. Well,
there you go. You have it.
Thank you. I just needed to hear it out loud. So those of you, if you're joining late, go ahead. I'm going to have you muted. It looks like Sarah's audio is not working, but we'll get her off the air. We'll get her working. I'll do that. If you have questions, you can use the chat to let me know that you have a question, or if you'd rather just type it into the chat, you can do that, and I'll let Meena know at a natural pause that, oh, we have a question while she's screen sharing. Some of the basic things we're going to cover, like I said, how Reddit works, how to work with Reddit, best practices for editorial teams, and then the art and science of the AMA, or the Ask Me Anything. With that, I will turn it over to our instructor, Meena, and we'll go take it from there.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me today, everybody. I'm excited to get started and talking with you about Reddit. I am just going to share this screen with you here. Give me 1 second and I will get you guys.
We can see your screen.
You got it?
Yeah, I can see your screen. It's a PDF, right?
Nope, it's actually...
I'm looking at a PDF, yeah.
Ah. Well, then let me get you on the right screen here.
There we go. I see your desktop. There you go.
And it's still loading. There we go. Okay, there we go. Now we actually should see it. Perfect. So we are going to talk through Reddit fundamentals here today. And are you guys still seeing the loading button?
Yeah,
there we go.
There we go.
All right. All right. So to get this started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am U-Meena San Diego, and what that is my Reddit username. What are your usernames and why are you guys on Reddit? I know, Kyle, you said that you're pretty active, but you don't post there. Does that mean that you lurk in conversations quite a bit?
Yes, he says he's a total lurker, and I just think it's funny that one of the primary rules of Reddit is you never share your username with other people. Continue.
Well, you know, I mean, okay, so I think that what we've found here is we've found our Reddit super user, Joe. So that's good to know. You'll have to keep me honest there. Well, I am Meena San Diego because I've always loved Carmen San Diego, made that my username, and kind of wanted to start introducing everybody to the vernacular of Reddit. And let's talk a little bit also about how Reddit fits into the larger scheme of things as a publisher. All right, there you go. Joe's joining the bandwagon, sharing his username there. Now, Reddit is, it's not like most social platforms that you're used to. It's not about connecting with the people. For example, as Joe said, sharing your username is a faux pas. It's not about connecting with Joe because I know him and I like him. It's about connecting with people who have similar interests. So it's connecting around that content and that interest versus the person. Now, Reddit is actually kind of a behemoth. There are 100,000 different communities, and these are all known as subreddits. Reddit has now 430 million monthly active users and about 199 million posts with 32 billion upvotes. So what you can see here is Reddit might be kind of considered an outlier platform for most publishers and most journalists, but it's actually a pretty rich space where there's a lot of conversations happening, where there are a lot of people going and a lot of opportunities to connect with new audiences. All right. Now, Reddit, in terms of traffic to websites, it's not a Facebook. It's not even a Twitter. It's not even a Pinterest or a LinkedIn. It's actually much further down the line in terms of social views being driven back to a site. So that's something that you should always keep in mind. If you're going onto Reddit as a publisher and saying, I'm looking to build huge scale, that's something that's going to be very difficult for you to do. Now, that said, you might have a story that, you know, spikes and gets a lot of Reddit traffic one day, and you might wonder what happened there. It's probably that someone has posted that into one of those communities. And you do have those outliers. But this data is from Parsley Currents, which monitors traffic from a lot of different platforms to all of the clients that it provides data services for. And what you can see is that average daily views referred by Reddit is actually pretty low at around 94,000. So you can see that that's just above Instagram on this chart, but this chart, you should basically look at Instagram and Like Shop as one particular entity, because Like Shop is also driving traffic to Instagram. You can also see that there's still over 1,000 articles every single day that are making their way through Reddit. So there's definitely a place to find an audience and to find traction for your content, though it's not going to be the same numbers as a Facebook or a Twitter or even a Pinterest at this particular point in time. And that's something that I'm not expecting to change at any time. It's something that's been pretty consistent. Reddit is usually going to be on the bottom of your refers, but it's still an additional source of traffic, and also for a lot of people, a great wealth of story ideas and an opportunity to engage, to show off expertise. There are a lot of cool things that can be done with Reddit, so it's not just a pure traffic play. All right. Now, some of you guys might know this, so feel free to chime in if you've got any thoughts, or if you want me to kind of speed through this section as we're getting going. Now, Reddit bills itself as the front page of the internet, and I kind of think it is the front page of the internet. What about you, Joe? Would you say the same?
I would, yeah, certainly in a slower way than Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say it's definitely not so much the breaking news, last thing to happen, but really a broader look at conversations, what's gaining traction on the platform. Now, some people do refer to Reddit as a social network. I think that's kind of squishy because it's not about connecting with other people. You know, as Joe said, I'm not supposed to be, you know, giving my username out and saying connect with me. And if you go and you try and search for a user on Reddit, you'll see that that's actually one of the poorest features of the platform. And that's because it's about connecting with people around an interest more so than connecting with a specific person. So in one way, it's actually a great way to kind of get out of that bubble that you might be in. You might think of your audience, say, as just local news consumers, but maybe you've got an industry in your town that's of interest to everyone in the world. Reddit is one way to bring that local story to people who might be outside what you thought of as your core audience, but are still an audience for you. Reddit is definitely a content and conversation platform. I would say it's less about you than it is what you have to contribute to the community. If you're on something like Instagram, it's very much influencers. Look at what I'm doing, look at where I'm at, things like that. But with Reddit, it's much less about that. It's more about the content that you have to share, the perspective that you have to share by up and down voting something, and your overall contribution to the community. And if you look at the type of Reddit that's developed, you really see this. So it's much different than most of the platforms that you're probably used to working with. All right. And feel free to chime in at any time if you guys have questions. All right, so this is the Reddit front page itself. Now, this is what users who are not logged into Reddit are going to see. And there's a few different ways that you can sort this. You can sort this by what's hot right now, what's getting a lot of voting activity, what's new, what's trending. You can look regionally. If you're a local publisher, you might want to take a look at what's happening in your state. First, this could be a good way to find a story idea. It's also a good way to gauge what might the audience interest in the storyline be. And as an editor, I found it's really helpful to guide how much you're putting into various stories. I mean, you might think a story is the biggest deal in the world, but if you don't see anyone about it on Reddit talking about it, maybe it's not, and you need to check your assumptions there. So it can really be good in a lot of different ways. If you look over here on the side of the screen, you'll see today's top growing communities. This is actually really great because you'll be able to see, is there a community that's growing that I might be able to be a part of, that I might be able to find really values my content and the insights that I'm sharing through my journalism. So it's really a good way to just keep tabs on how the Reddit ecosystem itself is evolving. And then at the top here, you see what are kind of trending storylines. And I think this is probably from a couple of days ago. So you can see, get a good idea of what's out there, what's happening. If you want to kind of quick check in on what you might have missed after vacation, this can be a great place to get it. And then this is, Reddit post itself. Looks pretty similar to a Facebook post, except there's a few different things. You'll see up here at the top, every Reddit post shows which community it was posted in. And these communities are known as subreddits. They're organized around all different types of interests. For example, I'm in a travel community. I'm in one called Churning, which is all about credit card points and things like that. There's a lot of different ways that you can get into this. R-News is definitely a community. R-Politics is a community, etc. Underneath the community, you're going to see the username of the person who posted it. Now, for brands like Washington Post, if they're posting from their branded account, that's what you'll see there. Otherwise, you'll see the person's name. You get the title of the post itself. You get the image related to a post, or you can get a video, things like that. And you can also see upvotes and comments on the post. And this is really important because these are both ways for your audiences to engage with you. And they're either able to have a conversation with you through comments, or they're able to state an opinion about the post that you're putting through their upvotes or downvotes. And so this entire package is really what constitutes a Reddit post. All right, I think Joe's on the chat, and he's got some great plugins and third-party apps, the Reddit Enhancement Suite and the Apollo app. I think Joe is a major Redditor here. All right.
It's just the UX kind of sucks. It looks really bubbly, and personally, I hate that. So there's a couple of different ones for people who don't like the big, bright, giant stuff and like more basic and text-based interface.
Yeah. Definitely. And that's one thing that a lot of people, they're reluctant about Reddit because the interface isn't exactly great. You can't find other people on it. And then there seems to be like its own little language that people are speaking on Reddit. I mean, the first time someone started talking to me about gold or karma, I was like, what are you talking about? Which brings me to this. There's some key terms that you want to know when you're getting started on Reddit. As we talked about earlier, a Redditor is simply a Reddit user. I gave you my username there. Joe gave you his. Subreddits are identified by R-, and those are various communities that are formed around specific topics, subjects, or interests. AMA, as you guys know, it's Ask Me Anything. It's a really popular Q&A format pioneered by Reddit. Even Bill Gates has done one, and for a lot of news organizations, AMAs are gold because you're able to show off your expertise and you're able to drive traffic to big projects, special projects, archive content, and things like that over time. So it's both engagement and traffic, which is a really great use of your time. And reporters tend to love it because reporters are experts about things and they like being able to show off that expertise. So this can be a really good way, particularly for reporters who might be covering more obscure topics. At Bloomberg, we had a lot of people who would want to do Facebook Live or things like that, but it was just, if you're going to do a Facebook Live about ETFs, there's not that much that's really, frankly, exciting or visual about it. But something like an AMA, if you look deeply on Reddit, you'll find that community that truly loves ETFs and really wants to nerd out on that with that super, deep dive reporter that you've got. So that can be one way if you're working within an organization and people are trying to get social traction with topics that might not quite find natural homes on other platforms. Reddit can really be helpful there. Karma. Now, karma is kind of a weird one to get your head around. It's basically a numerical representation of the value a Redditor contributes to the site. You accrue karma when you participate on Reddit. So something like upvoting, downvoting, posting, all of those things will bring you karma because you're an active participant. So if you look at my account, you'll see that I have no karma because I, like you, Kyle, am pretty much a lurker, at least from a personal account. Now, upvoting and downvoting. A post vote score basically determines its position on the Reddit front page, on home feeds, on community feeds, and things like that. People tend to upvote things that they'd support and think should be doing better, and downvote things that they might not, that they think maybe you're doing too well. Joe, do you got anything to add to that one?
Yeah, there's the Reddit Gold especially. Did you talk about that? I blanked out.
I have not gotten to Reddit Gold yet.
But so for instance, the karma stuff it's such a funny, it's a meaningless number that almost no one ever sees your total karma count, which is on your user profile.
Mm-hmm.
You very rarely go to other people's profiles unless you feel like arguing with them and you want to dig through their post history to see if they've said anything that could discredit their arguments. But it does accumulate over the course of your account's lifetime, and you can see it rack up or go down. And it's just a simple thing that gives you that dopamine feeling when you post something and you see a lot of numbers come in. You get that nice little, ooh, people like what I posted. It's equivalent to likes.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And then gold. Joe, is Reddit Gold something that you've used a lot?
Reddit Gold is something that I think is probably one of the most brilliant
Yeah.
microtransactions for a platform. It literally encourages users to pay Reddit to give an award to another user for submitting
Mm-hmm.
good quality content, which they may or may not have created, to Reddit. So Reddit both gets the traffic and the viewership and the good content, and then it convinces other users to pay Reddit money to give a little digital sticker to other users. And then, of course, you get additional
Mm-hmm.
access and features. So it's effectively a premium account for like a month or so. Um,
Yeah.
it's just there's very few things out there like that that have been implemented at that level or scale that have been that effective. And it's a huge driver of revenue to Reddit and Condé Nast. And they have a little display on the homepage showing how much server time your
Mm-hmm.
gold purchases have bought each day. And so just a really unique or innovative use of sucking money out of users and driving it to the platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different than memberships. I think it gives you a different feeling of buy-in. All right. And if you guys have any questions on any of the terminology that pops up, definitely feel free to ask. Reddit also has a great partnership site with a pretty good dictionary that goes, even far beyond these terms that we've defined. All right. Now, one thing that I think has been surprisingly easy about Reddit has been finding your communities. It's really easy to find your communities if you go and you dig down into subreddits that are trending and growing and things like that. And it's also interesting to take a look at what communities are growing. I think that one reason so many more news outlets are looking at Reddit is top 50 news communities on Reddit were up 17% year over year. Sports communities grew 34%, foods up 35%, parenting communities, it's huge, 87% increase there. Gaming, entertainment, beauty, and these are kind of the sweet spots in terms of what communities are growing on Reddit. Like I said, you've got that top area on the front page. You've got another area that's just dedicated to digging into subreddits you might be interested in. And those are all worth taking a look at because those communities where the growth is are places where you're going to find opportunities to be involved in the conversation and also find new audiences. All right. News on Reddit. Now, you've seen that news has been a very growing part of Reddit, and a lot of news outlets have been paying attention to Reddit. But for a lot of people, it's been difficult to figure out exactly how you want to approach the platform, how much resources to put in, because Reddit is a lot different than, say, a Twitter or Facebook. For a long time, the rule on Reddit was you never post your own stuff. You never would post an article that you've written or something from your organization or anything like that. And that's something that the Reddit community definitely didn't react well to. And Reddit's own partnership teams would encourage people not to do that because it would tend to alienate other people on Reddit. That's something that's changed quite a bit. Nowadays, the latest from Reddit is to be active in those communities that are relevant to you, but to do it in an authentic way. For example, if I was the Center for Cooperative Media and I wanted to get active on Reddit, what I would do is I would identify the natural Redditor within my ranks. And that here would be Joe and say, okay, Joe, we want people on Reddit to pay attention to what we're doing. What communities do we want to be involved with? What communities are you involved with that we should be having conversations with? Is there anything that might actually be worth posting? Those types of things. People who tend to authentically use Reddit are really able to find that line where it's not self-promotion, but it's giving someone in the Reddit universe access to information that they might actually find helpful. So for example, on Twitter, I might say, hey, look, here's this great story that I wrote about whatever. But on Reddit, it might be you guys are planning a trip to Alaska. Here's a story that you've got to read. Typically, you want to do this as authentically as possible. The best outlets are ones who actually have Redditors on staff, and they're just people who see opportunities to match their work with the communities that they're involved in. But they're not all about themselves, and it's definitely a very different type of mindset going into publishing on Reddit. All right. So Reddit's top stories of 2019: Robert Mueller hearings, Trump impeachment, Hong Kong protests, climate change. You can see there are a lot of big stories here, a lot of global stories here, and a lot of politics stories. The top Reddit community for news actually isn't our news, it's our politics. That's where most of the stories are going into, and that's where they're seeing most of their engagement and activity around those stories. Publishers are actually reacting in a few different ways to Reddit. Some people just aren't paying attention to it. If scale of audience growth is your focus, Reddit is often not going to be the most time-effective way for you to achieve that. But some publishers are actually really going all in. You see, you've got AL.com, Washington Post. They're two that have really gone deep on Reddit. With AL.com, they're looking to build community around Alabama news. They really take their Reddit profile seriously as a reflection of themselves and a community that they want to cultivate there. Washington Post, Democracy Dies in Dankness. Washington Post is probably one of the most applauded Reddit accounts out there. It was one that started with a whole bunch of AMAs. They had a ton of reporters who were really active on Reddit, so it was really easy for them to go out and share their perspective in this particular platform. They've got people like David Fahrenthold, who's been covering Trump for quite some time now, known for his notebooks, has a lot of answers, and you see that it merges well with a storyline that was popular on Reddit, and it shares expertise that only the Washington Post has. And they've also done a lot with humor and with memes. One thing that they've done really well, and you can actually see this even with their snoo, is they've basically gone in there and they're actual Redditors. They communicate with people on the platform in the way that Redditors authentically communicate, not in the way that they would feel they need to for Washington Post. So if you take a look closely, you'll see this account has a lot more humor, a lot more fun, a lot more memes than you might expect if you're a regular reader of the Post. Now you can see the LA Times here has been on Reddit for quite some time. Looking at that date, I would say they probably had a deep Redditor in their midst at some point in time. Probably someone who started the account, went on, and it laid there untouched for a while. And this is what happens with a lot of publishers as they see how much time and effort it takes and they don't want to, or someone who is a proponent of the platform leaves, and it just kind of dies on the vine. But profile pages are only one way to gain traction on Reddit, and they're actually limited in what they can do for a brand. More broadly, there's a couple of different ways that you can get traction on Reddit. One of the best ways is to participate in a relevant community. Like we said earlier, finding specific users on Reddit is a challenge. So one of the best things that you can do, and this is even if you decide to create a profile page, is to make it easier for Reddit audiences to find you. And one way to do that is for you to participate in conversations that are relevant to your work and to your interests. By tapping into established subreddits, you are able to reach new audiences and convert new audiences to create those profile pages, should you choose to do that, or to come to your site, to consume your content, maybe to subscribe to your newsletters, etc. It can definitely be top of funnel, even if you don't have a profile page and decide that you're not able to commit a significant time or amount of time or resources to the endeavor of growing your Reddit audience. Because growing an audience to a profile page can be very slow, very time-consuming process that requires patience. Now, the Washington Post actually operates one of the most successful profiles on Reddit. Like I said, it launched with a series of ANAs, embraces humor. But the other thing it does is it also inserts itself into conversations about its work. It's pretty easy to go in. You can do a domain search and see what content from your URLs are being discussed in various subreddits. If you do decide to create a profile page, that's a great way to seed your initial growth, is to go in there and say, oh, wait, you're reading our story. Here, maybe there's something behind the scenes, something that ended up on the editing room floor. Is there something else I can give you about that? That's a great way to build your profile if you do decide to create a profile page. page. Now, a few years ago, Reddit really was pushing publishers to create these profile pages. They envisioned a space in which publishers would launch pages, build followings, and have direct relationships with their audiences. But things like not being able to search for a specific user makes it incredibly difficult to be able to do that. So it's something that I think even Reddit will admit, you know, it's hit or miss one, whether it's actually worth it for you to really create and maintain a profile page. And that's one reason that you see a lot of publishers just simply have it. A lot of publishers look to Reddit as a source of additional traffic, and the best way to do that is to participate in a relevant, established community that's larger than your profile pages, unless you've been on there and you've really been at it. Like the Washington Post has invested a lot of time and a lot of effort into it, but you can see that, you know, its audience on Reddit is smaller than it is on other platforms. And I think that makes it easy for a lot of people to say, you know what, we don't want to do this profile. We don't want to have this persona. We're already in too many places. And there are other ways around it. Neither of these approaches is right or wrong. It's just a question of what are your goals? Are you looking to build community? Are you looking to build audience? Are you looking to spark conversations around your content? Are you looking to drive traffic? As you look at those goals, you can compare them with the amount of effort that you would need to put into them, the resources that you've got in the newsroom, and figure out which approach might be better for you. All right. Now the AMA. Joe, have you done an AMA?
I haven't done one myself. I'm not that interesting of a human, but I do know a little bit about the process for at least most of the official ones. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm going to find a reason to do an AMA with you one of these days. Okay, so an AMA is basically an ask me anything. And this is where somebody goes out there and they say, hey, ask me anything. I'll answer your questions. News organizations are perfect for this because they have a depth of knowledge that very few people have. I mean, I know reporters who know obscure things about the most obscure topics, and they are true experts in that field. And Reddit is an easy place to highlight that expertise. Now, the example on your screen here is something that AL.com did a few months ago. They had one of their political columnists answer questions about Alabama politics. You can see here that the ask is pretty broad. What do you want to know? I'll answer your questions. You tell people around what time you'll be back to answer their questions, and then they'll leave those questions for you knowing that you'll come back and answer them. Now, the AMA is great because it gives you a chance to share your unique expertise. It also gives you an opportunity to link to content on your site. You've probably got some almost like Bible-like primers about certain topics, and this is a great way to drive traffic to them. I think some people will do AMAs and they won't include those links, and it's really a missed opportunity because while someone's out here and they're maybe leaving their question for you, they can go and they can read their your content, which is obviously relevant to them, because why would they come and ask you anything about Alabama politics if they didn't actually care about things like how does the Alabama Democratic Party actually work? So it's also a good opportunity to get that traffic back to your site. Another thing that smart Redditors will do is they'll include links to their external social profiles. Like we said, Reddit is about connecting around a particular common interest and not about a specific user. So if you want to have people connect with you, if your actual goal is to build your journalist followings or build your brand's followings, it's, you know, totally acceptable to put in those links to other places where you can follow people. Now, this you can see is actually being done in our Alabama. So one thing that's really great is using AMAs to tap into those larger communities. Now, AL.com is obviously going to have a smaller profile than something like Alabama because the volume of people interested in Alabama probably goes far beyond the AL.com coverage area. So by partnering with Alabama, they're able to tap into this huge new audience and hopefully build their own audience. Typically when you're putting together an AMA, and Joe, if you've used any different kind of procedures, definitely let me know. If you're very active in a community and you're familiar with a moderator, you could talk to that moderator and say, hey, I want to do an AMA. Another approach is to talk to Reddit's partnerships team. And I've done this before. We had a situation at Bloomberg where it's like, we want to do an AMA on student loans. What's the best community that we could do this in? Reddit is totally open to helping publishers of all sizes and stripes figure out what communities are really active, where might this really fit in well, and actually making those introductions introductions to moderators who can help you set up those Reddit AMAs. And I find those are actually the best ones. When you've got strong buy-in from Reddit, you've got strong buy-in from the moderator, you've got a lot of people really talking up your event and helping to spread its reach. And that can be hugely helpful. Also, there are, 100,000 different communities on Reddit. I can spend a lot of time on there and I'm still not going to know it as much as Reddit, who also will have access to different data points than I as a public user would have. Now there's something down here, proof, that I want you to pay attention here. This is something that everybody does when they do an AMA. Some people will do like a picture with their dog, a picture with their sign, whatever. It's just meant to show that you're really there and that it's really you doing it. I think a lot of people, it's like, oh, if it's a celebrity, would that just be their PR person? No, this shows that that person is actually there doing it. So that's kind of interesting. Anybody have any questions as we're going through this? I don't see anything in the chat. All right, feel free to chime in at any time and stop me if you do have questions. Okay, so opportunities for publishers. I think some of the most savvy journalists for the last several years have known that Reddit is a fountain of story ideas and a way to keep track of internet culture and other storylines like nothing else. If you start to see, a few years ago, a lot of those interesting, super weird kind of internet stories that Business Insider was writing were stories that they would find on Reddit, because oftentimes this is kind of almost an early warning system, if you will, for interesting content and interesting internet behaviors, also other things, but really like that weird internet stuff. That is like Reddit is a fountain of gold for that. So that's a great opportunity for publishers. One thing that a lot of savvy publishers will do is they'll find a story on Reddit, they'll report the story like they would any other story, write the story like they would any other story, and then they'll also put it out in Reddit communities, often that inspired those storylines, giving credit where credit is due. And that tends to be just a really great technique for a lot of publishers. Another thing, anniversaries are really popular on Reddit. I know that from every newsroom I've been in, there's almost always at least a few big anniversaries that are important to your readership, and you generally are creating these big packages around them. Well, Reddit is a place where you can find homes for those anniversary stories. People are going to care if it's been 50 years since this kind of obscure person's died. There's a community out there that cares. Reddit gives you an opportunity to find that community and get a little extra bump for that traffic or that content that you work so hard to create. Reddit users love to go deep. I know that on Twitter, it can feel a bit superficial. People are sharing stories they haven't read. It's clear that they don't actually, know the subject matter that they're sharing. Well, on Reddit's different. This is a place where people will go deep. They're more likely to actually read their stories before commenting on them. They really value that deep expertise and that deep dive into things. And that's one reason that AMAs are one of the platform's favorite features. This allows you to really dive deep into a specific topic with an expert on that topic. And I think that's valued more on Reddit than it is, let's say, something like Facebook. All right.
So, Patricia wants to know what constitutes proof. So in some cases, I've seen it as a photo of yourself holding a piece of paper that says the name of the subreddit or your username with the day's date. There are other forms that it depends on the subreddit and the moderators. So just be aware of that. They'll ask you for some standardized thing, and it'll all be usually laid out in the rules or wiki, and you can go through.
Yeah, definitely. And if you do want to do an AMA, you want to get familiar with the community, you want to get familiar with that subreddit's rules. In my experience, the moderators are really great about walking you through, but you really just want to show kind of that I'm the one who's actually doing it. But some of them have gotten really creative.
And I would also note that some of the subreddits have default limits for participation before you can actually participate, for instance. So you have to garner or amass a certain amount of karma in a certain subreddit in order to post or leave comments, for instance. There are all kinds of little barriers to entry in order to prevent spam and disingenuous posting that various subreddits have adopted. For instance, one of them is account age. You have to have an account that's older than X. You can only post every 7 to 9 minutes, those kinds of things. So you have to be aware of that. You can't just like jump into a subreddit that day and expect people to A, allow you to post, or B, allow you to submit these kinds of requests.
Yeah, I mean, I think really what it is so many news outlets want kind of that quick return and they don't want to invest in the community. And a lot of these subreddits have some catch points to make sure that they're not exploitable in that way. And that's why I think the people who are deep Redditors value the community so much. It's so much harder to hijack than other places. And this is actually how Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian describes it. He says, imagine being invited to a dinner table where people are all discussing an article you wrote. How would you engage with them? This is exactly how you should think about engaging on Reddit. And I would say that in my experience, this is 100% true. Twitter is a place where, hey, here's an article I wrote. That might be enough for your audience there, but this is a place where people really want to go deep. Again, they don't necessarily care that you wrote the article, but they care about what you wrote about. And it is also like kind of being around in a dinner table. How would you engage with them? You would never go to a dinner table without kind of knowing your etiquette rules. You know, if you're going to a fancy dinner, maybe you'll look up which fork is for what. Maybe you'll go back to that old scene with Hector Elizondo and Pretty Woman. And Reddit is going to be key here as well, which brings me to what is proper Reddit. Now, this is something that changes a bit, but it's something that you definitely need to pay attention. The worst thing you can do on Reddit, I think, is kind of like break those Reddit rules, kind of those major faux pas. And that's one reason that self-promotion and promoting your own content, your brand's content, has been so looked down upon lately. So the first thing that you want to do if you're going to get started posting, Kyle, this is for you to help bring you from that lurker to active participant stage. But read the rules of a subreddit before posting. Get to know how this particular subreddit works, what the policies and procedures are. If you do have a post that you want to post in and you see a relevant subreddit, for example, let's say that I've got a travel article that I wrote on a credit card where you can get 500,000 miles and then churn it and it's over. I might say this is a travel story, but it's also a churn story. So I can post it to those two subreddits. That's not a faux pas. It's okay to post it in multiple communities as long as those communities are relevant. Like I wouldn't take that story and say, hey, let me go post it in this Audi channel or this politics channel, because it's completely irrelevant regardless of what kind of audience I would reach there.
In the comments in the chat, real quick, for those of you, I posted a link to one of the AMAs that reporters from the Asbury Park Press here in New Jersey did. It was posted and originally hosted on the IAMA, the IMA subreddit, and then it was cross-posted to the New Jersey subreddit where they work, and they were also allowed to engage with the people in New Jersey subreddit. An example of a relevant subreddit where you cross-post it. You wouldn't cross-post it to the funny subreddit, for instance, if you were in the case.
But I mean, that's great. That's a great way to serve different types of audiences and to engage with more people and to really kind of, you know, if those reporters then later on are trying to be more active in those subreddits, they've already got a little bit of cred there, and that's going to go over well. It's like, you know, if you're a regular visitor, that will definitely get you more points with Reddit. You also want to vote. You want to be an active member of these relevant communities. If you're going to be a part of the community with Reddit, you want to be a part of the community. Don't just lurk and do things that are good for you. Use it as a place to drive traffic to your brand. Actually be part of the conversation to whatever extent is appropriate within your editorial guidelines. Reddit has a lot of respect for original content creators and original posters. So if you can say, hey, you know, Joe originally posted this and I saw that, that can be valuable because people like being credited. I mean, I think for any of you who are journalists, there's nothing worse than having someone basically take your story, rewrite it, not cite you, and not link back to you, especially if it's something that you broke. So here's a place where it really pays to be kind of a better internet citizen in that regard. A few things you do not want to do. You never, ever, ever want to encourage people to troll others on Reddit. You want to be kind of a good steward of this community that you're in. And you want to kind of follow the procedures that they've established as well. You don't want to shamelessly ask for upvotes. This isn't a place to say, hey, vote up this piece, vote up this piece. Let that happen naturally based on the quality of that piece. Don't use the word breaking. Now, breaking is a tough one on social platforms and the platform like Reddit as well. Content takes time to spread, and it can take some time before something that you've posted actually hits the Reddit front page based on the number of upvotes. So if that takes 3 hours, that story is probably not breaking anymore. It's probably not developing anymore. It's kind of the same thing that you'll see on Facebook. People will put, hey, breaking story, but by the time it surfaces for you, it's 9 hours later and it's not breaking. So remember that people aren't always going to see your post when you post it. So keep that in mind as you're casting it in a greater timeline and sense of time. And don't flood Reddit with multiple posts. So this is not one where you want to set up your buffer to just like post all 50 articles that your news organization published today. Doing that could mean that your future posts are blocked and labeled as spam. And it's also just not very authentic. With most social platforms and content platforms, you find that actually customizing for the experience on that platform is worth it. And I think this is the same case with Reddit. Reddit, again, also is about the community, not about you. So you don't want to flood someone with all the cool things that you've just done, or all the stories that you've just written, unless you can find a way to connect that with the communities that they're in and the interests that they've had. So make it a true group conversation as opposed to a I'm sending you this broadcast type of approach. Now, if there's ever anything you want to know about Reddit etiquette, this is a great link down here that will kind of walk you through a lot of the do's and don'ts. But the biggest thing is to always read those rules of a subreddit and think of yourself as having a conversation around a dinner table. If you're sitting around a dinner table, you're probably not going to say, hey, everybody, like my content, like my content. You're probably going to actually be a little bit more of a person about that. And that's really what you want to do on Reddit. And if you'll take a look, Washington Post was moderated by Gene Park, and that's one of the things that he did incredibly well, is he was a true part of the community, respected that community, and showed that in the work that he did in promoting Washington Post content. And that's one thing that's really helped turn the tide towards the way Reddit community feels towards publishers. All right. And again, Reddit actually has one of the best partnership teams in my experience for publishers, especially small publishers. It can be really hard to get Facebook or Twitter rep to give you time of day and to help you with your issues if you're not a huge publisher, a huge advertiser, things like that. Reddit truly is much more democratic in that regard. They make their partnerships team super easy to reach. I mean, if you try and find a Facebook partner manager, and I bet it's going to be a lot harder, but here they make it super easy. Click a button, send them a message. They've got a full layout of how they work, what resources they have, and they're available to everybody. They've also got a best practices for profiles page. If you're looking to set up a profile page, this will show you not just within media, but outside of media, really cool approaches to profiles and how you might want to adapt that for your own needs. There's also a link where you can request to host an AMA, and Reddit will work with you on finding that AMA, coordinating with the moderator, and things like that. Especially if you're early on, this can be really helpful. And tools. There's a few tools that you can use with Reddit. Now, Reddit's user experience is one where, you know, as Joe said earlier, there are a lot of tools to kind of combat the fact that it's not always the best user experience. And there are two that I want to point out to you. Taboola. Now, you may know this as the annoying little ads on the bottom of various stories, which they are, but Taboola actually has a large suite of other products as well. And one of those is an integration with Reddit that allows for tracking and engaging with conversations around your brand. So if your newsroom has an existing relationship with Taboola, figure out who your Taboola rep is. And you probably have one. Somebody on your ad side or your paid traffic side probably knows that person. And see how you can set up tracking on Reddit so that you get alerts when someone's talking about your story in a specific subreddit. So you might want to go in and comment on that, not having to track it manually. Could be really helpful. And a lot of Taboola's, I guess, side tools, if you were, are actually free to newsrooms, but a lot of newsrooms don't know about them because they try and kind of keep them separate from the paid traffic acquisition efforts. Now, a second tool is CrowdTangle. CrowdTangle, I think, is kind of one of the best tools in social journalism. It's a little bit difficult to get an account set up with, but if that's something that you're interested in pursuing, talk to me and I'll try and help you out. This started as an independent tool. Facebook has since bought it, which is why it's a little bit harder to kind of get a hold of now. But what CrowdTangle does for Reddit is it will track subreddits in any kind of way you slice or dice them. So this is basically a list that tracks the top 100 subreddits. So what I did yesterday is I said, okay, what are people saying about the Iowa caucuses? And I'm able to see what Reddit threads are happening around this particular subject line. You can do that with anything you want. You can also save a search so that you get an alert every time there's an increase in Reddit activity around Iowa caucuses or politics or whatever it is that you're covering. And that's actually one of the most helpful ways to do it. And a lot of beat reporters who are savvy will set certain keyword alerts based on specific subreddits. There's some who just have tech related subreddits and they're looking for, you know, rumors of the next iPhone, whatever it is. And they'll get those alerts coming to you, which really is easy if you're a small staff or an independent journalist. And I mean, who doesn't want to use their time more efficiently so they can free themselves up for higher value tasks? Another thing you can do is you can kind of see what's trending on Reddit. This second image here is from CrowdTangle, and it basically shows overperforming content from Business Insider for the last 30 days. And the way an editor might look at this is say, okay, this is my content that's really performing well on Reddit. These are the communities that I'm performing well within. If I'm looking to increase my Reddit traffic, maybe to offset a decline from Facebook, maybe tapping into some of these topics where there's increased interest from Reddit is a great way to do that. You're also able to see, are there certain communities that tend to drive spikes to your content a lot? Where are people talking about my work? Where might I want to jump into this conversation? A story like this war crimes case, maybe that's a great opportunity for an AMA. Obviously, people are talking about that story. People are upvoting that story. There's deep interest in it. And if I happen to have a reporter who really knows it, that's a great opportunity for me to tap into that interest, dig into the expertise of the reporter, lift their profile a little bit, drive traffic to a larger piece of their work. And you can set these by overperforming, underperforming, every instance. I think there's some publishers that want to know every time a story of theirs makes it onto Reddit. You can also have a URL and basically search like your URL within a Reddit or within one of these lists, and then have email sent to you whenever something's popping there. And a lot of editors find this really helpful, particularly as they're trying to figure out, where do I want to focus my reporting resources, and how do I kind of get those interesting stories before other people. Anybody have any questions on these? All right.
I will just point out that if you're hoping to use the search function on Reddit to find anything, good luck. It is garbage, and it has always been garbage, and it is, you're much better off just Googling what you want to know and then adding the word Reddit to the Google search.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's not just usernames, it's everything on Reddit that's, not very searchable. And that's a great tip there from Joe. And I mean, the user interface, I think with a lot of people, it's a little intimidating. Some platforms, it's like they really try and make themselves visual and easy to use. But Reddit takes a little bit more effort, but for some journalists, that effort really pays off well. Reddit can be a great additional source of traffic, a great path to story ideas, and a really cool way to engage with your audience and to show off your expertise. I think that's kind of one of the best things to do is, a lot of reporters will get super bummed out that their story doesn't go viral. And sometimes you look at it and you're like, well, look what you're covering. Like, you're covering some really obscure topic. Like, I mean, the amount of times I've had to tell someone the Fed is not going to go viral. Like, I love you, but that's just not going to happen. This is a great way for those reporters to kind of have their ego stroked and say, you know what? Your in-depth knowledge about the Fed's balance sheet is never going to go viral on Twitter, but there are a whole bunch of nerds over here on Reddit who want to dive deep on what's happening with line 68 and, reverse repos. So it's a great way to do that too. I found that a lot of reporters who are reluctant to embrace platforms will actually look to Reddit because they can find those niche audiences.
Two things. We got a question in the chat. One thing, slight correction on the slide. Mina's username is u/.
Yes,
Mina,
it is.
Mina If you see r/ or /r/, that is referring to a subreddit. U/u or /u/ is referring to a user. And then the question was, can you friend or can you follow people on Reddit like I can follow on Facebook? You can. You can also send them friend requests, which you can also direct message them. And you can see, in most cases, how many times you've up or down voted a particular user. So if you are engaging with someone and you see a large negative number, you can tell, oh, wait, I've already argued with this person. This is likely a troll. This person is coming after me. So you don't have to worry about engaging because you can see that you're negative. You have a negative relationship already. And a lot of this, again, I'm speaking a lot of this as someone who's used Reddit Enhancement Suite, the tool I posted earlier, for almost the entirety of my experience. I don't recognize the homepage without it. And so I highly recommend using that. But again, some of the features may be different. So take whatever I say with a grain of salt.
And that's a free tool, right, Joe?
100% free. Yep,
Okay.
free. It also allows you to manage multiple accounts. If you'd like to use multiple accounts to, for instance, I have one account, you have one account that's like for art, and you like to share pictures of art. One account for pictures of puppies and kittens. One for hard news and, journalism related stuff. It's encouraged. It's not people have throwaway accounts. So if they want to talk about something sensitive, they create an entirely new account that they'll likely never use again, that's not tied to them or their other identities. And they can ask questions honestly and anonymously. So there are all different ways you can use the enhancement suite and the variety of tools that Reddit gives you to, explore the internet in an anonymous or, not anonymous, I guess, whatever the opposite of that is.
Yeah, exactly. All right. What other questions do you guys have about Reddit and getting the most out of it for whatever your goals might be?
Feel free to unmute yourself and ask if you'd like.
Yes, definitely. All right, guys. Well, I think that's everything then. Oh, Snoo. Snoo is like one of my favorite. The little character that you see, that guy's Snoo. He's kind of awesome. Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Joe, Kyle. Man, I'm rooting for you. I'm hoping that you and I can both come out of our personal lurking on Reddit to become, more active members of the community. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, Joe, for organizing, and have a good day.
Thanks, everybody. I'll be sending the recording and the transcript from this shortly, so keep an eye out for that, and sign up for our other trainings at centerforcooperativemedia.org/programs. Well, I'll see y'all soon.
Bye.